I knew something was wrong the moment I heard the metallic screech from the hangar. It wasn't the sound of a door or a loose panelet, it was the guttural whine of a cutting torch chewing through steel. I sprinted across the tarmac, boots pounding, and when I reached the open hangar doors my stomach dropped. There she was, in all her smug glory, Karen Whitfield, HOA president and serial destroyer of other people's property, standing next to two men in orange vests with a flatbed truck idling outside. They were halfway through unbolting the wing from my 1943 Stearman biplane, the same one my grandfather flew in the Navy, the one I had restored piece by piece over 10 years. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I shouted, my voice echoing off the metal walls. Karen didn't even flinch. "This eyesore violates community codes," she said, holding up her clipboard like it was the 10 Commandments. "Non-operational vehicles, especially hazardous ones, are subject to removal and disposal." I felt the heat rising in my face. "It's not a vehicle. It's an FAA-registered historic aircraft. And this isn't even HOA property, it's my private hangar on leased county land." She smirked. "You're still within HOA jurisdiction." I pulled out my phone, already dialing. "You're trespassing, and you're interfering with federally protected property." Her smirk wavered for the first time. The two men paused, glancing between us. "Finish the job," she barked at them, but one of them muttered, "Ma'am, I think we should before I cut him off. Touch one more bolt and you're committing a federal crime." What Karen didn't know was that the plane wasn't just a family heirloom, it was also enrolled in the National Historic Aircraft Registry and covered under federal preservation statutes. Destroying or dismantling it without authorization wasn't just a finite, was prison time. But before I could unleash that little detail, I heard tires crunching gravel. A white pickup with government plates rolled up, and out stepped a man in a blue windbreaker with FAA enforcement on the back. Here was the twist. I hadn't called him. My neighbor, Tom, the quiet guy who lived 2 doors down, had heard the torch and immediately phoned a friend in the FAA. Tom, as it turned out, was a retired air marshal who'd seen my grandfather's plane on the registry and knew exactly what strings to pull. The agent walked straight past me to Karen. "Ma'am, I need you to step away from that aircraft." Her chin went up. "I have full HOA authority here." He showed his badge. "And I have federal authority here. You're in violation of 49 U.S.C. Section 46316. That's up to 10 years in prison and a $250,000 fine." Her face drained of color. "This is absurd," she sputtered, looking to her hired crew for backup, but they were already stepping away, hands raised. The agent asked me for my statement, and I handed him my phone, already recording from the moment I entered the hangar. Karen's voice was crystal clear on the video, ordering the dismantling of the plane and declaring it subject to removal. The agent nodded. "That's all I need." By that afternoon, the plane was safe back in its cradle, the torch gone, and Karen was sitting in the back of a county sheriff's cruiser, glaring at me through the window as they drove her away. I thought that would be the end, but the real showdown was yet to come. A week later, I was subpoenaed to testify in a federal hearing. The FAA wasn't just charging her, they were investigating her entire history of property removals. Turns out she had a pattern. Boats, RVs, classic cars, anything she deemed non-compliant, often ended up sold off through shady salvage companies. My plane was just the first time she'd picked the wrong target. When the day came, the courtroom was full. Reporters from the local paper sat in the back, scribbling furiously. Karen sat at the defense table, still wearing that same leopard print scarf she thought made her look sophisticated. The prosecutor played my video, then brought Tom to the stand to explain the aircraft's federal status. Watching her really realize that she hadn't just crossed an HOA line but had stepped straight into federal criminal territory was like watching a balloon deflate in slow motion. Karen's lawyer tried everything, arguing that she'd acted in good faith to enforce community bylaws, claiming she didn't know the aircraft was federally protected, even suggesting that I'd baited her into the situation. But the prosecutor tore through every excuse like it was tissue paper. They had her recorded ordering the dismantling. They had the registry documents showing my plane's protected status. They had sworn statements from her own hired crew admitting they'd been misled about ownership and legality. And then came the kicker: 2 other neighbors testified that Karen had done the exact same thing to their vintage vehicles, which mysteriously ended up at the same salvage yard tied to her cousin's business. By the time the judge recessed for lunch, Karen looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. The leopard print scarf was drooping, her makeup smeared, her pen scratching nervously at her legal pad. When court resumed, the FAA agent took the stand and methodically explained how dismantling a registered historic aircraft without federal approval was not just unlawful, it was a serious criminal offense. The penalties were spelled out in chilling detail: fines that could bankrupt her, and prison sentences that could outlast her presidency in the HOA 100 times over. The verdict was inevitable: guilty on all counts. The sentence: 18 months in federal prison, $175,000 in restitution to me for damages and attempted theft, plus another $90,000 to the FAA for the investigation and enforcement costs. She was also permanently barred from holding any position in a homeowners association, condo board, or similar governing body anywhere in the United States. When they led her out in handcuffs, she didn't look at me, but the neighbors who'd come to watch, some of them victims, others just tired of living under her thumb, stood a little taller. You could feel the relief in the room, like someone had finally cut the ropes that had been binding the whole neighborhood. The weeks after her sentencing were a blur of change. Without Karen, the HOA board collapsed. In its place, we formed a volunteer neighborhood committee with open meetings and transparent budgets. People started talking again, really talking, not whispering over fences. One neighbor rolled his restored 1969 Mustang into his driveway for the first time in years without worrying it would be towed. Another brought back her sailboat from storage. The air felt lighter. As for my plane, I finished the restoration that fall. On the day of its first flight in decades, the whole neighborhood came out to watch. Tom stood beside me, hands in his pockets, grinning like a proud uncle. As the engine roared to life and the wheels left the ground, I looked down at the crowd and saw something I hadn't in a long time: unity, pride, and the sense that this place was worth fighting for. Karen's name still comes up sometimes, usually as a cautionary tale for what happens when petty power meets the wrong target. And while some folks think the prison sentence was harsh, I can't say I lose sleep over it. She made her choices, and she underestimated the one thing she couldn't control: the law and the people willing to use it. What about you? Was seeing her face justice in a federal courtroom the right way to end it, or should I have just taken my plane and walked away?